Story 1. Asked my high school crush out to the senior prom after having my confidence and courage built up by my friends telling me that the worst she can say is no. She looked at me, laughed in my face after I asked, and walked away still laughing. Friends had my back the whole time though. Shout out to solid friends. Story 2. After being at a company for 3 years and receiving a few increases in responsibility, I asked for a raise. My boss basically chastised me, and I remember his exact words: "If you don't like it, you can go flip burgers down the street." It kind of blindsided me because we had talked about a raise since I had taken on some pretty major responsibilities that 2 other employees held before they quit. I guess I know now why they left. I found a job down the street a few weeks later selling insurance that paid about 30% more with some benefits and put in my 2 weeks notice. For years later, I'm making double what I was before, so I guess I'm glad he made that comment and forced me to job search. Story 3. Messaged a girl on Tinder for the first time as my friends told me, "Hey, what's the worst that could happen?" She didn't say anything for 2 weeks, then dropped this bomb: "Honestly, just kill yourself. People can really surprise you sometimes." Story 4. 10th grade. We have this outdoor retreat, kind of a get-to-know-you type deal. It was a small school with only 28 people in my graduating class, so this was more to get to know the freshmen who we had known as 8th graders previously, so we were familiar with most of them. There was one, though, who I didn't recognize, and she was cute. We started talking and had a lot of the same interests. We liked the same bands, TV shows, actors, and we were even both military aviation nerds. Like, what the heck? So, I asked her for her number, and she gave it to me. We chatted for the next 3 days for hours every night, and then I asked her out to the movies. She said yes. The next day, I told my friends about it at lunch, and some of the more popular girls overheard. They ran to her, and to this day, I don't know what they said, but moments later, one of her friends comes up to me and says, she doesn't want to go out with you and she never would. Stop calling her creep," or something to that extent. To this day, I have trouble remembering any events which were more damaging to my ego. Story 5. I confessed my feelings for a close friend to get it off my chest. However, she thought I was essentially treating her as a rebound to make my ex jealous. While it wasn't the case at all, my ex and I are actually on great terms. She was adamant and was really hurt. Because we were really close, she knew me very well, and in turn, she started doing every single thing she knew would hurt me. She spread lies about me, tried to turn my friends against me, and even started dating one of my best friends to spite me. The silver lining is I learned that she's manipulative and abusive, so I cut her off and definitely dodged a bullet. But I definitely did not anticipate such a volatile reaction. Story 6. I went for a job interview for washing dishes. They said no, but added that I was not qualified to wash dishes. Completely wrecked me. Now, I go into anxiety attacks just thinking about job interviews. Story 7. My friend got married a few years ago. He proposed to her thinking this, and she said yes. It turns out she only said yes because he was moving to France, which was her lifelong dream. After they moved, she divorced him. My friend was very upset, obviously. Story 8. After getting dared by classmates, I finally plucked up the courage to ask out my high school crush in a what's the worst that can happen kind of way. She was so offended. She refused to even look at me for months. Edit. I thought I should add, her name was Karen. My first bad experience with a Karen. Story 9. 16-year-old me worked up the courage to call my crush and ask her out on a date. We barely knew each other. The phone rings. Her mom answers and acts surprised by my call, saying she wasn't expecting to hear from me so soon. That's weird. She talks a bit more. Something feels off, but I'm running on adrenaline, so it doesn't faze me. Then she says, "Oh, I'll go get Lindsay." Great. Her mom puts down the phone, and I hear her yell, "Lindsay, Mike's on the phone." My name was not Mike. Not even close. I panicked and hung up the phone before she got there. I never spoke a word of it to anyone. Story 10. I met who I thought was the love of my life at work. About a month into knowing her, she invited me and my other coworkers to her place to drink and smoke. One by one, everyone filtered out until it was just the 2 of us. I wasted no time and said flat out, I have feelings for you and I don't think it's one-sided. I know there's something here. She said there was, and we started making out immediately. Things escalated and literally, as I was about to enter her, she looked up and said, "But I don't want to date you." My heart sank immediately, and I just apologized and sat up. She fell asleep, and I spent all night just cleaning up the place. The next morning, she woke up and realized she was naked and said, "Did we have sex?" My heart sank, and I just said, "Almost, but we decided it wouldn't be the best idea." Thanks so much for all the wonderful comments. I honestly didn't expect to come back to all this. I'll try to respond to everyone now. Story 11. I was at a football match, and a confusion between the police and the ultras, known as Torcida Organizada, here in Brazil, started. I was trying to get away from the tear gas and wanted to pass through a perimeter set by the police. I told a police officer I wasn't with the ultras and commented that I have asthma, asking if I could climb over the metal fence they had set there. He just hit me really hard with his baton. I thought he had broken my arm. I understand he was also under stress, but a no would require less effort than hurting me. Since then, I don't trust the Brazilian military police. Story 12. This was back in primary school, but still, I had a big crush on one of my best friends. I told some of our other friends how I felt, and they said I should tell her. So I did in an email, and she replied with a long paragraph saying how gross and disgusting I was and a whole lot of things like that. Completely ruined me, and to be honest, I haven't ever really recovered from the things she said. She also refused to talk to me ever again. 14 years later, and I still haven't been in any kind of contact with her. Story 13. Told this girl I liked her and wanted to take her on a date. She awkwardly changed the subject, then proceeded to ask me how to ask this guy she likes out on a date. A year after that, he and I became great friends. Story 14. She didn't even let me finish. Then texted me the next day asking, "What were you even trying to say?" And when I told her, she asked me if I was stupid. This was a girl that wanted to hang out every day for 2 months straight and texted me anytime we weren't hanging out. And I finally got up the nerve to say how I felt. Forget some people. Story 15. I told my middle school crush I liked him. He said he appreciated my honesty and told me he was gay. I followed up with well wishes and thanked him for his own honesty. He then said he wasn't gay. He just didn't know of a better way to turn down a Jewish person. I'm not Jewish. Edit 1. A lot of people want me to say the word, which I understand, but I don't feel comfortable writing it because I grew up in a small town of the stereotypical Midwestern Presbyterians, Lutherans, and Baptists as a very Italian Roman Catholic raised person. I don't know how the whole thing about my family, me specifically, being Jewish started, but I do know I heard slurs enough times for me to have a genuine distaste for the word itself. Thanks for the permission, internet, but it's not something I want to repeat. He moved away. The day I told him was his last day at school, and immediately got a girlfriend who my brother and his friends described as a cave troll with too much hair but not on her head. They visited once. She was not a nice person and kept staring at me, even when she would have to physically turn her whole body in a seat to look at me. I don't know what happened to them. I like to imagine he became a better person and she figured out how soap works. Story 16. When I was in junior high, I asked a girl out and she laughed at me. Then the guys I thought were my friends held me in place and got her to kick me in the groin. Story 17. Asked a girl on a date, ended up spending the worst 5 years of my life with her, only to be cheated on, and she spent $4,300 of my money before it ended. Lost friends and relationships with family were strained. Super frustrating. Story 18. Not me, but a friend and her girlfriend went to Planned Parenthood to get sexually transmitted disease results. No, you don't have any sexually transmitted diseases, but you are pregnant. So much for the whole lesbian relationship. They broke up the next day. Story 19. Excuse me. My friend and I were here a few hours ago for breakfast, and you were our server. The whole time I wanted to ask you out on a date, so I came back. May I take you out to dinner sometime? Oh, how sweet. Are you sure it was me? Yeah, we were sitting right. No, I mean I started my shift like 5 minutes ago, so it couldn't have been me. Asked out the wrong girl. Story 20. Ask girl out, she says yes. We go have dinner, play some mini golf, and people watch in the park, all while chatting and just getting to know each other better. It was a good time. She thought it was just two friends hanging out instead of a date. It felt like a punch in the gut when she had a boyfriend with her the next day. Story 21. Will you marry me? Actually, I've been seeing a guy literally older than her father, and I kind of think he's the one. And she had the nerve to call me up when he dumped her a few short months later. Story 22. A few years ago, I walked up to a girl at a restaurant and asked her out. She smiled and said very politely, "I'm flattered, but I only date white men. I am brown. That still stings pretty bad today." Story 23. Me in 7th grade, 1978. The first dance is coming up. I think of asking a classmate, but I'm nervous. My dad says the worst she can do is say no. I call her and ask, and she asks if it's a joke. Damn. Story 24. How about you lose some weight? Was her answer loudly in front of a crowd. I think this has made me obsessed with my weight ever since. The good punchline is, the last time I saw her, she had gained a lot of weight. Story 25. I was in high school and I sat next to a real cutie, so I asked her out using those exact words. She says yes, so I'm excited and give her my number, but she doesn't text back. Fast forward a week and her best friend runs up and slaps me, saying, "You made her cry, you asshole." I still don't know what happened. Story 26. Landed in Mission Beach in San Diego in the summer, basically the party zone in San Diego, but I was a young, lonely guy with Asperger's, so flying solo. First day, I'm hanging outside the hostel's front yard, which is adjacent to the famous boardwalk, thinking about what to do today. I had to put on sunscreen, so Mr. Young, dumb, and full of energy, who's seen way too many adult films, thinks, I know. I'll ask the super hot woman that just walked by to put some on my back. That's a way to hit on women according to 1980s movies, right? Besides, what's the worst she can do? Say no. You got this, champ. Barely finished the "excuse me, would you mind putting some sunscreen on my back?" And the woman turned to my face and just screamed as loud as she could. It was a loud, guttural growl, like you just stepped on a gorilla's toes, or the doctor gave you the wrong medication quantities in the psychiatric hospital and you're freaking out. Loud and long, disturbing scream. The whole boardwalk was staring like I just grabbed her inappropriately. I immediately went inside the hostel, packed my things, and left for home. Good times. Story 27. She admitted to leading me on for a month, then asked if I would get offended if she started seeing a friend of mine. 2 days after this, I see she has a new boyfriend, neither me nor my friend, and after liking the Instagram post, she blocked me. Bullet dodged. But ouch. Story 28. Ask for a day off to see family and get fired for completely fabricated stories of insubordination. For reference, I had worked through my vacations the previous 4 years and allotted 5 sick days in the 5 years I had worked there. I was the bar manager and supervising manager at a high-end group of restaurants. I was hired as head bartender and advanced to bar manager in a matter of months. I had also taken online courses for management, leadership, and communication skills. I was good at my job, had a positive attitude, was very interested in what I was doing for my occupation, and was very professional. I also wrote the training manuals to cover each position in the front of house and back of house, as well as an introductory package and training for newly promoted managers. When I was fired, sales at one restaurant dropped significantly, 30%. The others all suffered significant but lower losses as well, 8 to 20% of sales. Also, costs increased across the group in my absence. Many of my staff and serving staff wound up following me to my new job. I think it's fair to say that I had been doing a good job and was good to work with. The paperwork regarding my firing was fabricated as I stated. The general managers in 2 locations colluded with the human resources manager at head office, falsified dates and events, and tried to bribe and manipulate my colleagues group-wide, floor managers, bartenders, servers, bus staff, food runners, host staff, kitchen staff, not to testify or lie about it. Thanks to my colleagues' honesty and willingness to testify, I was able to succeed. Their testimonies, as well as my own copies of my yearly reviews, which did not indicate any insubordination and were entirely favorable, and proof of performance bonuses and incentives achieved are what won this. Otherwise, it was just my word against theirs. I can only guess at the motivation that led to my firing. My replacements were two of my own people who I had interviewed, hired, and trained myself, as well as one of my colleagues who I am close friends with. So, it wasn't as though someone was shoehorned into my position from outside the company. This came from two general managers and the human resources manager. I never got to know why, only who and what. I contacted labor relations and was awarded compensation for unjust termination and a fair severance package. I also sued them for slander and libel, character defamation. It took more than a year for labor relations to be completely finished and 3 years for my lawyer's case to come to a conclusion. Verdict to the plaintiff. I worked a few unappealing jobs and odd jobs until I found something good that I enjoy, paid well, and I could stay long-term with, but I survived. I survived thanks in no small part to good people willing to give me a chance. Treat people well and you'll be okay in the end. Also, get copies of your performance reviews and anything else which indicates your good standing. You never know when or if you'll need them. All I asked for was 1 day off. My aunt and uncle were in town on a flight layover before going to China. That's all I asked for. Just 1 day. And it was a Tuesday, I think, or a Wednesday. Anyway, that's my story. Too long. Didn't read. Wrongful dismissal, lies, fabricated documentation used against me with no obvious catalyst, and years of lawyers and lawsuits for asking for a day off to see family.